All right. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. um, so, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Pixel Venture Podcast. I'm Korey,
And I'm Jake.
and with
And
us today, because okay, you wanna do that? You wanna start the episode like that? All right, okay. How about you introduce yourself, guest? Because you interrupted us last time, you might as well interrupt me now.
I mean, hey,
uh,
that's just equality, dude.
yeah, hello. My name is Ryan. You might remember me from a previous episode on this podcast from a pretty long time ago.
2
Uh,
years, I believe.
yeah, it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
But here we are,
And,
sitting on this virtual love seat together.
and now we're back at the anime lunch table.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can it just be called Anime Lunch Table 2 Escape to Africa? Or is that too long?
I mean, we could.
I don't know if I can fit that in the bubble, actually. We'll figure out a better title later.
I'm sure there's enough pixels for it.
okay. I'll give you that one, Jake.
We're already off to a great start. Anyways,
Yeah.
So, I know one thing that at least Ryan and I can talk about, and you can give in your 2 cents, Jake. But, for anyone who doesn't know, the Battle Royale genre has become huge. Like, you have Apex Legends, you have PUBG, you have Fortnite, you have Paladins doing it too, you have, like, Call of Duty doing it. You got all these franchises. So, of course, Tetris has to jump on that bandwagon.
Mm,
What are your guys' opinions of Tetris 99?
okay, so the best way I can describe this was it was a meme I saw floating around on Twitter. And it was essentially, that Grim Reaper meme, where the Grim Reaper is going door to door, knocking on people's doors and then
With the
leaving
pools of
with
blood in front of him?
pools of blood. It was
Yeah.
that, but the Grim Reaper was Tetris 99, and he was knocking on Apex Legends' door.
Wait, didn't Tetris 99 have a bigger player base with its launch day than Apex Legends?
I would not be surprised. Well, you have to kind of think that this
I'm
game
gonna
is
fact
like.
check this.
Everyone kind of saw it in the direct and was like, damn, I'm going to download this because it was available like right after. So there was a lot of hype just like right after it came out.
Yeah, like, I've been playing it actually a lot because, like, the only other way to play Tetris on the system was to get Tetris Puyo, like that
Mhm.
combination game, and I wasn't about to drop $35 just to play Tetris. So, yeah, it's good because the Switch doesn't have many free games,
Yeah.
and like the free games that it has, it's like there's Fortnite, you got like some coloring book app, you got like some pay to win games, things like that. Like just having just basic old Tetris, and it just so happens to be competitive at the same time. Like that's fun.
I think it offers like a few different things. It offers a space in the Switch library that didn't really like have much competition there. So it gives somebody that doesn't want to pay money for, when you get a Switch and you get a game or two with it, you play those a lot. But it gives the player that doesn't have a lot of money just something they can try out. Um, and it also kind of occupies like a unique space just that anybody can pick up. So even
Yeah,
somebody
I
that
mean,
does have a lot of games can just hop in and play it for like a few hours and be done with it.
yeah, like that's why Tetris was so popular. Like, because it's really easy to understand. Like, it's such a universal game. But
Exactly. It's
well, go ahead.
it's this game that everyone's played. Everyone, like, some people are better than others. Everyone's at like very different like levels, and then this game kind of it bundles them all together in an interesting way that it turns the game of Tetris into like a community uh, game in a kind of weird, interesting way.
Yeah. And it's been so successful that they're actually going to be patching it probably with, I hope, more music because, listening to the one song over and over is,
Hmm.
yeah. But Jake, I remember when we were talking a little bit earlier about this, you had some opinions.
Well, like, I'll just stick to the Tetris I can get for free from, like, the Android store. Like,
But
like
this is free
there's
too.
there's no difference, and I already have it. I mean, like, do you guys not have phones?
Do you guys not have smartphones?
Just get the fucking like iOS Android store free version. I don't need to buy a Switch to play it. And like I'm sure it's on like PC, but like I don't need that like there.
I will say the one thing I found really cool about Tetris or Tetris 99 is that it kind of gave me an easy way to like, even without playing the game hardly like ever, like, you know, everyone plays it a little bit here and there, but no, like very few people actually like practice or do anything like that. So it kind of gives you like an easy way to say, stacked up against other players, this is how well I do.
Hmm.
I find that like an interesting take on multiplayer by just taking like a rudimentary single player game and kind of comparing you to other people.
Like normally, I'm not one for these kinds of games. Like I am not a competitive person. Like I don't like competitive games and stuff like that. Like PUBG and Fortnite, they never interest me. But like the thing is that it's because those games would be like when you commit to one of those games, you don't know if you're committed for like a short period of time because you might get picked off right at the beginning, or a long period of time. And the thing with Tetris is that the longest game that I've had on it so far has been maybe like 7 or 8 minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely not that long.
Yeah, it's not like a game like PUBG where you could be running around in a desert for 25 minutes doing absolutely nothing, and then a guy finds like a sniper rifle and just picks you off.
Mm.
And
it's one of those games that you play as long as you are skilled at the game. So if you know you're not that great at Tetris, then you're only going to last like 2-3 minutes at tops. But if you're somebody that's like really skilled and you're getting like top 10 consistently, you might actually end up playing for like significantly longer in each game.
My main question is Tetris 99 money matches when? I want to have a
actually
LAN
don't
tournament.
know. From what I saw when I played the game, I think you can only just do the online 99 player mode.
Well,
There's no like. Okay, so they're like, are they planning on adding like local?
Well,
like if you have multiple people with switches near.
The main thing that's pushing is the online though.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You do realize that there have been Tetris tournaments in the past, right?
Well,
yeah,
So I don't think that's like a question as to like if they will.
It's more about like coordinated it with like the new system.
Yeah, basically just making it really simple and easy for like people or to set up tournaments with friends on their Switch.
Well, I mean, if it's on the Switch, like it's it is portable as opposed to like if you like had to bring like an Xbox with you.
Yeah.
But like
the one thing I will say regarding that's kind of a good segue if you wanted to talk about the like the uses of Switch features. But I found very like limited usage of like the actual like the advertised. You know they advertised it as bringing it to that rooftop party, and you can set it up on the
bring it to the rooftop party and sit alone while everyone else has a good time.
bring to the rooftop party you're not invited to because you have a Switch.
Like that's how they advertised it though, and I find it strange because I never see people doing that. I almost never see like anybody in public, even on like college campuses. You don't see people walking around with their Switch.
Really? Because like all over my campus, people are using them. Like,
I don't see it either.
Like I remember I was literally just playing Smash like down sort of in the cafe area, and then the guy walked over. And he was like, "Dude, is that Smash?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he just quickly synced up his controllers, and we just did one-on-ones for a bit.
The main issue with like even in like for a lot of people. I guess in the circles I'm in, if I see people playing Smash, they're playing with GameCube controllers, and they have to set up the adapter, and they have to go through that whole hassle.
Real
so
men use Joy-Con.
I'm gonna pretend you didn't say that, but
that was a joke. But go ahead with what you're saying.
Even for like other games, I kind of wish I saw a little bit more. It's not like playing on the Joy-Cons isn't bad, It's not. It doesn't make certain games like even like Mario Odyssey or
Ooh, I got a rant for that.
Breath of the Wild, but those games are still playable in the handheld mode. But you just don't see people walking around with that or using that very much.
Yeah, because like for me, like of course the Nintendo games are going to be heavily leaning against like using the independent movement options of the Joy-Con. Like that's just natural for them. So but like there's a lot of things in Mario Odyssey where it's like, so you can use a stick to move, or you can shake your arms to go faster, or you can do these certain movements in order to go faster, and there's certain ways that you can throw your hat that you can only do with motion controls, like throwing it straight upwards or straight downwards. And that makes me a little frustrated, because like I almost exclusively play in handheld mode, because that's just what I like. And going from a game like I talked about Enter the Gungeon last episode, so if you're interested in hearing my opinions on that game, just check out that episode. But I go from playing that, where pretty much I can just keep my Joy-Con on the sides, I can play it confidently, to go into Odyssey, where it's like the best experience is motion controls, and me being like, okay, and then it's like, are you sure you don't want to use it? Really? Please?
Yeah, the game does push for usage of the motion controls, for sure.
Breath of the Wild rarely does that. I can only think of like a handful of shrines where it has you do that.
Yeah, and even then, some of those shrines were some of the worst ones, from my experience. I've heard a lot of people complain about that same point.
I don't know. I just feel like motion control is just something that Nintendo's just always going to have, based on the success of the Wii, and like how that can, because like you have people where you're like, they rarely play video games, and you're like, let's play a racing game. You give them a GameCube controller, and they try to turn it like a steering wheel.
Yeah,
like
I find that's pushing the like boundaries of gaming in that respect is kind of something that Nintendo's known for. So there's a part of me that's kind of glad that even though it's not like super necessary all the time, that they're still experimenting with it and trying it even after like we've moved on since the Wii.
I mean, well, Jake, I know that you've stayed like pretty loyal to PC gaming.
Yeah.
So like, what is your take with like motion control, or say like stuff like, well, I guess technically Kinect was motion control in PlayStation Eye, like because it's body tracking. How do you feel about that stuff? Kind of like leaning towards like Nintendo stuff, but then also things like VR with like the Vive and things like that, where it's actual full movement.
So, I think first I'll start off by saying that, like, while I am part of, I'm a PC gamer, like most people, I started off, like, playing on a console, which included the Wii. I mean, like, I was a fan of it. Like, it was fun to use the Wiimote and, play stuff like Mario Galaxy, Twilight Princess, things like that. And so, like, I don't really have a problem with it. I kind of see what you're saying about, like, when it kind of forces you to use them, even if you just want to do it, like, handheld, like a regular controller. But I guess, like, to kind of go against that, it's like, if you're getting that console where that's one of, like, the main features, it's kind of to be expected that, like, it would be optimized more towards that.
I see that.
And then when it comes to, like, VR and things like that, I haven't done, like, a ton of VR stuff, but the stuff I have done, like, it's always been like really fun because it feels more like, in a way, like when you mess up with something, it feels like it's more like your fault and not just like, janky kind of controls. At least that was from my experience from like trying it out at like PAX a few years ago, but as opposed to like, I know some people have complained about motion controls on like certain like Wii games, for example, where they're just like awful.
Skyward Sword.
Okay.
Skyward Sword.
Okay.
Sonic and the Secret Rings.
Okay. It's funny you mentioned those two games because I'm just going to give my 2 cents real quick. Skyward Sword, the only reason that people have such a like, we're like, oh, that's bad, and Twilight Princess is good, as far as like the game was very linear. Like, I'm not gonna deny that, but it was because everybody was like, oh, it would be so cool to have 1-to-1 sword combat, and then people just were playing it and were trying to flail their arms around and like, it doesn't work, this is bullshit, like just getting frustrated because it was like you have to be exact with your movements because of the Wii Motion Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And
I can tell you how like the issues I had, because they're a little bit different than what you're describing. From when I played Skyward Sword, I had a lot of issues with kind of the syncing between the Wii Motion Plus and the like sensor bar.
Oh yeah.
So it would constantly be like desyncing. So I'd go to use like a menu, I'd point it straight at the screen, and it would be all the way off in the corner, and then I'd have to go reset it. And the game does make that easy, which I think kind of shows that they were aware of this to some degree. But like I'd reset it, and then maybe like a few minutes later I'd go back into the menu, and my Wiimote would still be pointing at the corner, and I'd have to do the same thing, and it gets very frustrating dealing with that for the entire game.
That's why I'm kind of happy with the with just the way that the Joy-Con work, where you can have it act like a Wiimote, but it's not. And also just like a nice little fun detail of having, there's specific games where you would use like something to like point at the screen. Apparently Wiimotes can sync to the Switch, so like with games like World of Goo, you could actually play it with like the Wii controls.
Huh. I had no idea.
I remember seeing, I think it was a Game Explained video, but I'm not positive. But as far as Sonic and the Secret Rings, so that was my first Sonic game. And I've beaten it.
You poor man.
I've beaten it 100%. And I actually enjoyed the game a lot. The music was great, all right? And then like some of the stages were really cool. You cannot, Jake, you could agree with me. Evil Foundry was so cool with the lava golem.
Yeah, like I will back you up. I have good memories of the game. I don't remember it being like bad, but like looking back on it, I know that's just because like I was probably so easily entertained as a kid that I'm like, ooh, Sonic game.
Last time we talked about that, I went back and played it, and I still had fun.
Like that's basically what my experience was with Sonic Adventures 2. I remember like fucking loving that game back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And then I played it again. I'm like, this game's shit.
Yeah, the adventure games are kind of a dumpster fire.
Yeah, like I remember having fun with it, but like I feel like it just kind of
totally
mellows out into
agree.
like a meh. Like it's more of like a kid's game, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's entertaining for them, but like especially by modern standards, it's just not. It doesn't hold up.
Though having seen some of the cutscenes from the original Sonic Adventure,
Ooh.
those
Rubber
are
band faces.
those are quite entertaining. To say
Watch
the
out,
least.
Tails! You're going to crash! Ah!
And then his mouth is still talking
Yeah.
after he's finished all his lines.
Or like when you go to a victory screen and Sonic just thrashes around like someone tased him. Man.
You're just not moving around at the speed of sound.
Ooh, got places to go. Gotta follow my rainbow. But you know what? Since we're on this subject, How about we talk about games from our childhood that we loved, and then we went back and realized how bad they were? Because I know we kind of started that.
Ooh.
I feel like that'd be a fun thing to talk about.
Just as like one final word on Sonic Adventures 2. Chows. That is all.
That is all.
That is all.
But
moving on.
Yeah, I mean, I have an idea of what game I could talk about, but do you guys?
Gosh,
you guys got
I would
ideas?
have to do some thinking.
All right, I can go first then.
All right.
So, I've always been a huge fan of the Tony Hawk franchise, with like the video games, just watching him actually doing like tricks and stuff like that with X Games and like his shows and things like that. Like I loved him. So the day I got Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam for my DS, I played that whole game and I beat it in a day. And I loved it because there was so much like so many different options as far as like customizing your character. There was a skill system where depending on like certain missions that you complete, you can put skills into your balance, your jump, things like that. And I thought all the levels were really, really cool looking and had like a lot that you can do with them. Like a lot of creative freedom could be taken as far as how you navigate it. I went back a few months ago and tried to play through the campaign. It is the most janky shit I've ever played. Like the the balance mechanic is so finicky. Like if you tap the D-pad a little bit too much to one side, you immediately fall off. Certain tricks are almost impossible to land. And just of course back then, like the 3D that the DS was doing with that was probably really impressive. It actually hurt my eyes to look at for a long time, which is really weird to say because right after that I played Metroid Prime Hunters for like a long time, and that game, I'm pretty sure that game came out before Tony Hawk's Downhill Jam, and like the models in that actually looked really good. But yeah, anyways, that game hurts, and the only reason that I went back to play it is because that is the game that introduced me to Anti-Flag. So I have to thank them for half the music that I listen to.
Are they? I know Tony Hawk. The Tony Hawk series uses a lot of like different music.
Yeah.
Are they just like a music group that was featured in that game?
What they do is that they license out tracks. Like that's how like in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, that's how like Superman by Goldfinger got so big because they chose that to put in that that compilation that was featured. A lot of skateboarding and like sport games have like licensed tracks if they can afford it.
Yeah.
I will say that they kind of sounded like crappy covers or like incredibly bit crushed because DS. But like
Yeah.
that's how I found Out Here All Night by Damone and Press Corps by Anti-Flag, and those are two groups that I still really, really like and I really can recommend. And honestly, sports games in general have like great soundtracks. So if you're looking for new music to listen to, just search like the FIFA games. The FIFA games have fantastic soundtracks.
I would actually have to check that out.
That's how I found like the Kooks and John Newman. I also found Block Party through them. Like lot of talent. But after that little ramble I had about Tony Hawk Downhill's Jam. Wow, I almost forgot the title. After talking about that game for a bit, Jake, Ryan, you got any ideas?
I was able to think of two games actually. The first one is a little bit more well known. The second one is not.
Go with the one that's not for first.
I would have to go with. It's from like a popular series, but it's not that well known in it. Though I've seen a few people that have heard of it. It's the Mega Man Star Force games.
Dude, you played those?
Specifically the third one, because that was the one that I by far played the most.
Oh man,
I
I don't remember the third
loved
one.
those games when I was a kid.
I don't remember the third one.
I appreciated the first. I played the first one later on, and I'm actually not even sure if I finished the second one.
The second one was the
Though
only one I played.
I'm pretty sure I own the second one, so I could go back and play it. But I played the Black Ace version. I put so much time into that game, and I loved so many different things. Not only did I go back and play like the first Star Force game, but I went back and I bought some of the Battle Network games.
Dude, Battle Network was so much fun.
I played a couple of those. Exactly, and it was like the Star Force series was like a new take on the Battle Network series that had been going on. There were like 7 games in the Battle Network series, so it was kind of like it was taking that same idea of like kind of like a digital network, like Alter Ego, Mega Man, that kind of worked with like a human character, and it took like a new spin on it and said instead of this like current set of mechanics, and kind of like it used a lot of the same mechanics, but it added a lot to it, and it's been so long that I don't remember all the specifics, but there was just as a kid it was such like a flashy and like fun game, and some of the mechanics like so when you finally got to that point in the game where you could start doing like transformations, that shit was just it was so cool to me, and I loved playing that game, especially when you could go back, because after you beat like the final boss you could go back and fight like challenge versions of the like the other bosses that you saw in the game, and some of them got like crazy difficult, and there was this whole like end game zone full of just really difficult brutal stuff, and like learning the mechanics and finding all the little nuances, like all the chips you could put in to have like special moves in that game. All the sword chips specifically were the ones that built up like it was called noise, which is what you transform with. So all of a sudden you learned that the sword chips are some of the best ones that you can put in your deck of chips. So you'd start using those more often, and you'd start like farming for high level chips, and there was this kind of like end game that was just a lot of fun to mess around with and learn about.
So wait, was this a game that you liked and then you went back and you didn't like it, or do you still like it?
I go back every now and then, and I'll like look at the soundtrack or I'll look at some gameplay, and it just doesn't hold up quite as well as I'd like it to. Like I've tried to look back at it, and maybe I should try like actually replaying the game. It's been so long since I actually played it, but everything I see with it just doesn't hold up quite as well as I would have liked.
Is it just like weird control schemes?
Not even that. It's just the whole game. A lot of aspects of it. Visually, it's not that impressive. The audio, music, all of that stuff is kind of lackluster. Like I still kind of appreciate the gameplay, though. The more I see it now, it's like the gameplay was kind of easy in retrospect.
Well, that's like a lot of the games when you're a kid, like where it's like easy and you feel like a badass. Like Lego Indiana Jones for the DS was a cakewalk.
But at the time, it was the type of thing where
you felt so accomplished.
It was more difficult. It was more difficult, but you felt more accomplished just because you were worse at games in general.
Roasting me while also talking about your side of the thing. Nice, Ryan.
What about you, Jake? Do you have any games kind of like that?
Honestly, not really. Between like, there aren't really that many games I end up like going back to very often.
Mm-hmm.
And like the few examples of games I have like played after like playing them like years ago and then coming back, like they've usually been like good experiences. Like I went back to playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which is still probably my favorite in the series. Because I played that on Xbox, and then I eventually got on PC when it was on like a super cheap sale. And I really liked that. I went back to Dear Esther when I played that like way long ago, and then I recently got the like remastered version in a humble bundle and played through it again and enjoyed it.
Still need to play that game.
Yeah, I can highly recommend it. I could go on forever.
Okay, I would disagree with you there, but
really?
That's contrary.
Let's get into this.
What we were talking about.
We can get into this because I basically have like nothing else to.
We have no structure to this show. Let's go.
Yeah, we don't care.
Fight Club.
Okay.
Fight Club.
So here's my opinion on the game.
All right.
Dear Esther was a unique idea of putting together a story that was kind of built differently every time and getting your own unique interpretation off of it.
Okay.
But the problem was that the gameplay of that game was just insufferable. Like, I understand that it's a walking simulator, but it's a walking simulator in the worst sense. It doesn't make...
Really?
You don't have... It's unlike some games like Firewatch, where you at least have, like, some semblance of interaction. Literally, the only thing you can do in that game is walk. You can't walk faster. You can't... I don't even think you can just do, like, a kind of a pointless jump. There's nothing. Which means that you're walking straight at this slow speed for, what, an hour and a half, maybe?
Maybe about.
Which wouldn't be a problem if the game was, like, super linear, but there's enough of those, like, odd side paths that places that you do want to, like, explore and check out, that it ends up just taking way longer than it feels like it should. And it's not even, like... It takes longer than it should, and you feel like, oh, I wish I had something, I wish I had even just, like, a pointless little jump that I could do to jump in place, even if it didn't, like, make me move any faster, just to have something, maybe a crouch, something, you know?
There is a crouch.
Oh, there is?
Yes.
I did not notice that.
Entire argument collapses. Best game ever.
Checkmate.
Best game ever. But even on the story front, I wasn't particularly impressed, just because it was almost too cryptic and too vague that I couldn't. I left the experience being more confused rather than I had kind of. It wasn't like I had put together my own story. It was more like I'm just straight up confused.
So high school.
I have no idea.
Sorry.
I mean, that's not wrong.
Yeah, that was really rude of me to interject, but keep going.
It's not wrong, but I like whenever I think about Dear Esther, I just don't. I don't feel like I got anything. I feel like I just wasted an hour and a half.
Really?
That's how I walk away from it.
Interesting.
Rebuttal.
So, I will, I will agree with you that, like, yeah, it's, like, a walking simulator in its purest form where, like, there's just walking and crouching. But, like, the point of the game, it, first off, I'm pretty sure it was, like, the first walking simulator that, like, was made. And that's kind of like what set the standards, and then they built off of it. Which I don't usually use as like an argument for something, like, you know, just because it was the first of its kind doesn't give it like a free pass, but like,
yeah,
I feel like it can be important for like perspective. Kind of like how like the original Doom might not be seen as like a great shooter, but for what it did, like it was revolutionary and stuff like that.
Or like
Mm-hmm.
what's that endless runner Cannonball, where like there's a lot of endless runner apps and games that do a lot more than that does now. And
Yeah.
also just like a little thing. I feel like there was walking simulators before Dear Esther. I think Dear Esther like shot it into the limelight though.
Dear Esther started as, I want to say, like a Half-Life 2 mod, like originally.
Thank God they didn't use that engine.
And yeah, they eventually made it into like, you know, its own game, and then they remastered that.
So like Stanley Parable.
But it did originally start as yeah. It started as a mod, and that's from what I remember. Like, you know, there could have been like some like other like obscure, or rather more obscure walking simulators, but like it was definitely one of the ones that like rose to popularity to any extent.
Mm-hmm.
So like obviously like the thing I would say to defend it against like why you can't jump or why you can't sprint is because like the point of the game is to take in the surroundings, and it's to take in that environment, and just like you're just supposed to think. You're not supposed to like busy yourself with like, you know, jumping around everywhere, or like, you know, doing some surfing on the walls. Like it's purely just to like walk around and explore as if you're actually there, like walking around. You wouldn't just like run around an island. You would like walk, and you would take slow steps. And in the director's commentary that's in the remastered version, they actually like talk about how they thought about adding a sprint button, but they like decided not to, for the reason of like they didn't want it to be like a super fast-paced game. Like they wanted it to be slow, as like a reason to like take things in. And like I agree with you, like sometimes like the backtracking is a little bit off, but I personally just like use that time to like think about like what that was, because like in one playthrough you could go down like, you know, like a, you know, big opening in a bunch of rocks and find nothing at the end, but it's like, well, like, you know, why is it there? Like, could there have been something there? Or like, you know, like just looking around and exploring.
I think that's justifying like having kind of weird design choices of having just like areas that mean nothing.
Yeah. And like the big thing about the game is that like things will like randomly generate within the playthrough. So like you can play it, you can go somewhere and find nothing. But then if you play it again, like you might find like a pile of books, or you might find like an ultrasound picture, and you can like build onto the story and like what you think the story is based on what you find in your playthrough.
I don't know. I found, just from my experience, that everything was so like loosely tied together. There were these vague hints of characters and like previous events that they talked about, but nothing like nothing pieced together like firmly enough that I could kind of understand. Like I would understand, oh, this character existed, and they did a couple of things, and I'm like, but like how does that tie into? How can I relate them to any of this? How do I couldn't. There wasn't anything like solid enough that I could say, oh, this character went here, and they did this. It was more like, oh, this character said this, and they did this once upon a time. It was really cool in a few specific circumstances. Like you'd find like I think you could find like a campfire or something like that, which in those sense it made sense. But finding like a metal shack in the middle of nowhere, that it was very difficult for me to understand any of that. The moments that things actually clicked and I like kind of could understand something were just too few and far between. And there wasn't even that like relief at the end, like, oh, this makes sense. That never came.
Well, as my rebuttal, I would say the fact that everything is very loosely together and unsure is part of the point. Um, like, like you say that there's no like hard evidence of like who was where, and there's like random stuff like on the island. Um, and are you like referring that to like you don't know like which people like were on the island when?
Maybe not like when, but
Like
just
were
kind
they
of
ever
that.
like there where you are?
Yeah, is what I'm looking at related to the character that the narrator is talking about, or is it not? I don't know.
Well, part of it is like, is it relate to the character? That's up to you, because like you'll get like pieces of dialogue like out of order, or you'll get option 2 over option 1 when you reach a certain area. So
Hmm.
that's completely up to you to decide. But like another thing is like there is nothing that says that the island that you're exploring is like real. So there's no saying like if anyone was actually there. You're just like hearing about these narrated like letters that were written. So, like you have complete freedom over like what you think the story is and why you're there and who you are and who the people are and what they did. Like that's completely like freedom to you.
I feel like there's people who've played the game and like have either of you ever watched Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I
Mm-mm.
have.
Do you remember the scene with Charlie Day where he has like just the wall covered in papers and he's just like freaking out over like trying to like draw connections between everything?
And Pepe
Yeah,
Sylvia.
Sylvia.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
I can imagine some people like going to that extreme in order to try to understand the plot. But like
I
the,
I'll admit I almost like went to that kind of extreme. I'll even just like commit to it. I went to that extreme being like, wait a minute. Like I thought I knew like what the game was about, and then I tried like describing it and I like wasn't sure, so I decided to look it up and like yeah, like everything is just randomly there and everything's like meant to be a little bit confusing. And everything's supposed to be kind of like dreamlike in the sense that like everything's loosely connected. And so I thought I could try to like piece everything together. But if you try to do that, there's like enough conflicting like evidence to things where like that's the point of it. Like it's not supposed to be a completed story. You're supposed to complete on your own when you play through it.
yeah.
I mean, I kind of I guess that gets to the heart of the problem where when I played through it, I wasn't able to complete it.
Mm.
I
And
wasn't able
like
to complete the story,
So
and that
yeah.
was kind of why it was so unsatisfying to me.
would that be like I guess the main debate is was it like intentional of the developers or was that just like poor design?
Oh, that was completely
Well, I know,
intentional.
but like someone
Is it intentionally poor design?
yeah.
Is
Well,
another way to put it.
define poor design.
As in literally just being like so here's a few details. Well, we might add something later. I don't know.
Here,
This might
here's a bunch of random
yeah.
Details. They may or may not be
This
connected. We
this
don't
pile
know.
of rocks is pretty neat. Maybe we'll make this the most compelling thing in the plot.
I mean, if like I'm like yeah, like I don't even really know how to respond to that.
Checkmate.
Uh,
Nah, sorry.
Oh,
like the first thing that comes to mind when it's like things being like too loosely connected and nothing being like confirmed if it has a purpose, like my mind just goes to Dark Souls and how that too has a very like non-linear way of telling its story. But like I feel like I don't hear about people complaining about that way of storytelling, even though it's virtually the
You know
same,
why nobody
except Gear
complained
Esther
though?
just like takes it to an
Like, do you
extreme.
know why nobody complained? Is because like
Why?
I believe it was promotion for the second game where or it was either second or third game where literally they would pay like someone who can create a comprehensive version of the lore of Dark Souls. Like they would pay them like thousands of dollars and give them free copies of the game. Like I remember that from like a
Hmm.
while back. I feel like that's why people don't really complain because there's someone where it's like this is the definitive like this is the story. Like with Dear Esther, everything's random.
What?
So it's like
Well, they just said that there's a definitive story
For
for Dark Souls.
well, yeah.
Has anyone gotten paid for that?
I'm not sure.
Because if not, it's very possible that they could have just said that, knowing they would give people money. I'm not saying that that's what they did, but like, to be fair though,
The other like rebuttal I would make to go with that though is that Dark Souls has a little bit more meat on its bones than Dear Esther. So the story can be loosely like tied together, and it might not be like fully comprehensive, at least like not obviously, but there's enough like there's enough compelling gameplay if that's the type of game you like to um to like keep you getting through. Where Dear Esther's gameplay is much lighter, and I suppose it's more similar, or it is a bit similar in that regard. Where if you just like walking around and taking in the scenery and relaxing with that sort of thing, then it wouldn't surprise me that you'd like it for this like similar reasons to Dark Souls.
I do have a folder of screenshots, Jake.
I do. I would argue that, like, Dark Souls may have more meat on its bones, but you play Dark Souls for a lot longer than you play Dear Esther. Like, Dear Esther is a much smaller game, so I think it can get away with having, like, less gameplay mechanics and focusing more on its non-linear storytelling than Dark Souls. Because, like, if they made Dear Esther to be the size of Dark Souls, with as many, like, levels and places and all the things like that, like, it would just be way too slow a game.
Oh, of course.
But it's the fact that they made it as, like, small as they did, into, like, roughly, like, an hour and a half, depending on, like, how much you, like, explore and stuff like that.
I find it... see, I guess I would have a different take on exploration than you do. Because one of the best games I can compare this to would actually be Breath of the Wild. Because that game gives you a ton of different movement options. You can get a horse, you can sprint around everywhere, you can wall climb, you can teleport. It gives you pretty much anything you could want. And still, I found myself way more inclined to go out of my way and to explore and enjoy the scenery than I did in a game like Dear Esther.
But the difference is that's an adventure game.
I was going to say, here we come to the point in the podcast where Ryan wants to talk about Zelda.
That's an adventure game, not a walking simulator.
Yeah, because
like,
different mechanics.
Like, I'd be saying, like that'd be like saying... That'd be like playing chess and saying it's too slow if you compare it to a game like
For Honor.
Like League of Legends or For Honor or Overwatch or something like that. Like, it's too slow. Like,
I was playing Jenga the other day, and it's nothing
game.
like PUBG. Real disappointment.
So, like, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I just think it's comparing, like, apples to oranges. It's like, like, it's not going to be as, like...
It's not a very fair comparison.
Yeah, it's not going to be, like, as open as an open world game. But I think, like, again, a similar argument to Dark Souls, like, Breath of the Wild is supposed to be, like, a huge game you can sink, like, hundreds of hours into easily and still, like, be finding new stuff. Whereas, like, Dear Esther is almost designed to be, like, you play through it once and you have your version of the story and you have your telling of it. You could play through it more times to get either more details or a different kind of story. But, like, it's not supposed to be, like, dozens of hours even. It's just supposed to be like, yeah, you went through it and this was your takeaway from it.
It's like appetizer instead of entree type thing.
Yeah.
I guess that maybe the fact that I'd make a comparison like that kind of shows where I'm at in this, like, where my headspace is at.
And it's, like, completely fine if you're just, like, not the kind to be into, like, walking simulators in general, or even if you just didn't like the, like, slower pacing of it. Because I personally enjoyed it and thought it was, like, refreshing to not feel like I'm just like running around. Like I felt like I could take my time and I wasn't like missing anything. I didn't have to feel like, oh, I better make sure I make it to the next like action sequence. Like, no, I can just go at my own pace and do what I want as I like unpack the story in my way.
See, it's interesting because that's a similar feeling to what I had with Breath of the Wild. It was that I could freely take my time and I could do things at my own pace, even though there were other things to do. So I guess it's a similar like sensation, similar like feeling you wanted from the game. Just we both have like different like we have both different types of games we use to get that, which I think is fine.
Yeah, I mean, like, I will settle with that, but to be fair, I have also played Skyrim and The Witcher. They're both also open world games, but I probably have like a different approach to them than you do.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
I see exploration in those games personally as like a secondary objective. Like if I see something cool, like that's fine, but like I try to focus to like, you know, like the quests or you know, like the activities and other things like that.
Yeah, that definitely is that's just a difference in how we approach that sort of game.
In any kind of game where there's exploration, I want to see everything. That's what it comes down to. Is like I like when I played Okami, like for the first time, I pretty much just like I went hardcore, like looking around every single area, doing everything I could possibly do. When I know normally in like any average playthrough of any game, people would take it seriously the first time and then go back and be like, okay, now what did I miss? Like I always go in with like a completionist mindset.
And that's I found that interesting because that's as far as I can tell, that's something me and Jake, neither of us have.
I don't know. I just want to see what the developers put in the game, like whether or not there's a reward for getting 100%. I just want to I want to see like everything that the developers put in.
When I generally play a game like that, like the first time I play through it is just me going through the game. Like I'm not trying to 100%, just like what do I personally like come across as I'm like playing. But then I'll usually play like a second time over for like you do the like completionist run of like trying to get everything and seeing everything, but that's usually like a secondary like get everything I can out of the game that the developers wanted.
Also, Jake, just so you know,
yes,
during the time you were talking, I was trying to unwrap a Hershey Kiss, so there might be a little bit of noise on my end, so you might need to lower that.
I haven't heard anything on
Dude, I'm a ninja.
Yeah, no. But I can hear the Hershey's Kiss in your mouth.
Cool. Great.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me get some water.
In case you didn't know, I was reading something.
Dude, did you know I was eating something? Dude, I was eating food during the podcast. Nobody could tell.
Dude, normally Ryan's the one eating stuff on my...
Yeah.
We're not going to end the podcast like that. We're not going to end with Ryan like crunching on chips.
I will
They're pretzels, thank you very much.
I will end it by saying that I think people should try out Dear Esther if they want to enjoy a story that they get to help create, and if it is convenient for them to do so and they're willing to pay whatever the price is for the game.
And I think that if somebody wants to create or play a game where the story is that something they can create, they should download Super Mario Maker 2 coming to the Switch sometime in 2000.
And,
but that's just my opinion that I'm not supposed to have.
And it's my opinion that you're wrong. But I'm gonna.
That's just what makes games.
I'm gonna
great.
end it with.
They're all for different people.
You go ahead. Apparently, Korey can't say anything too. That's fine.
Well, I was just finishing my thought that games are for everyone.
Well, I'm sorry for speaking while you're interrupting. But,
Yeah, you should be.
Like, man. You know, we made the joke at the beginning of this that this episode should be like Anime Lunch Table 2 Escape to Africa, but we didn't mention any anime. So I'm just going to say this right before the outro.
Sorayori got robbed!
Exactly! Literally. So the Anime Awards by Crunchyroll just happened tonight, and a lot of the choices for winners I do not agree with.
They are very questionable. Welcome to the
Boku no Hero Awards.
Boku no Hero Season 3
and
awards. Movie. Sponsored by Devil May Cry 5.
Featuring Dante.
Featuring Dante from Devil May Cry.
I didn't think he'd be in this one. Also, Devilman Crybaby, cool, you won an award, but, like, did you deserve it?
Did you deserve it? That's the real question. Yeah. Did people watch it because it's on Netflix?
Probably.
Yes.
That's why people think Bandersnatch is a good movie. Anyways, how about we get away from these opinions? We could actually have, like, I would love to have you on another episode to just, like, talk about, like, movies and shows and things like that. Well, yeah, so we can have a true sequel.
I will say, if you wanted to talk about anime in the past year or so, there's been quite a lot to talk about.
I mean, there's been like shows themselves, controversies, things like that, and yeah, it's that would definitely be an episode. So yeah, maybe sometime in the future you'll hear this guy again.
Yeah, we'll be getting Ryan back on the podcast when I have a sick day.
so
I don't have to just sit here quietly.
Well, no, I'll find ways to compare it to Skyrim or Warcraft or
that's part of the podcast.
Or like spinning pens and things like that, and you'll be good.
Oh, that reminds me of an episode of Breaking Bad.
That reminds me of an episode of Fairly
with the Game of Thrones crossover.
But yeah. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Pixel Venture Podcast. My name's Ben Korey. Well, my name's Ben Korey. Wow, my name is Korey. It's
what are you changing it to?
Rodriguez.
Yeah, dude.
My name is Rodriguez.
I am still Jake.
And my name is Ryan, and thank you for having me.
I mean, I would say it's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Because it is. Or has been. I can't speak anymore. Jake, say goodbye so we can cut this.
See ya.